I never meant to take him seriously. The words slipped out of his mouth the way jokes do when a room feels too quiet and you want to fill the space with something light. But the look on my face must have told him I had crossed a line I did not even know was there. My name is Brittany Cole. I am 28 years old, and until last week, I lived alone in a glass penthouse on the 32nd floor of Riverside Towers in the heart of Portland. It is the kind of place where silence costs more than most people make in a year. The penthouse belonged to me, paid for with 12-hour days and a marriage that ended before I turned 27. Floor-to-ceiling windows, marble everything, a view of the city that real estate agents called stunning. But I had stopped looking at it months ago. I made my money in corporate law, the kind that turned small companies into acquisitions and people into line items. A corner office, my name on the door, a secretary who knew I took my coffee black with 2 sugars. My parents lived in Florida now, retired in content. We talked on holidays. My younger sister was married with twins in Ohio. She stopped inviting me to birthday parties when I missed the 3rd one in a row. The last real relationship I had ended when my husband left his ring on the kitchen counter and a note that said he felt like he was married to a stranger. I kept that note in a drawer. Some lessons take longer to learn. Most nights I ordered takeout and fell asleep on the sofa with my laptop still open. The penthouse felt bigger when it was empty. But empty was predictable, safe, or at least it was. Everything changed on a Thursday night in late October. Rain poured so hard it sounded angry. I was 3 glasses of wine deep into a contract I had already read twice when water started spreading across my floor from behind the sofa. Dark, relentless, pooling faster than I could think. I called the building manager in a panic. He gave me a number for emergency repairs. A man answered on the 2nd ring, voice rough and warm like he had just woken up. He said his name was Robin Hayes and he could be there in 20 minutes. His voice had a slowness to it, an easiness, like he was used to fixing things that broke at the worst possible times. It was almost 10 at night and the rain was vicious. But there was something in the way he said, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," that made me believe him. Robin Hayes arrived soaked to the bone, carrying a toolbox that looked like it had seen 3 generations. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with dark brown hair dripping water onto my white marble floor and work boots caked in mud. He did not wait for introductions. He went straight to the leak, knelt down, and got to work like he had been here 100 times. I sat at the kitchen island pretending to read emails while he moved through my space with quiet confidence. When he finished, the dripping stopped and the apartment went still again. Too still. He stood, wiping his hands on his jeans, and told me it was fixed but the pipe was old and I should get the building to replace it soon. I thanked him and said I would send payment tonight. Then he looked around my penthouse, really looked at it, and said something so soft I almost missed it. "This place is beautiful," he said, "but it feels like nobody lives here." I should have been offended. Instead, I laughed, short and tired, and told him that was because nobody did. The rain hit the windows harder, and I do not know why I said what came next. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was the way he looked at me like I was a person instead of an invoice. "I signed divorce papers last week," I heard myself say. "He got the house in the suburbs. I got this." Robin did not flinch. He just nodded slowly like that made sense. Then, casually, like he was talking about the weather, he said, "Well, if you ever get tired of all this glass and marble, I've got a farmhouse about 2 hours north. Guest room's probably smaller than your closet, the porch creaks something terrible, and my neighbor's rooster starts up at 5 in the morning. But it's quiet, real quiet." He smiled after that, easy and crooked, making sure I knew it was a joke. I did not smile back. I just stared at him and memorized what he said, word for word, like it mattered. He left, and I stood in my perfect apartment listening to the rain and feeling like someone had just offered me something I did not know I needed. By the time I went to bed, I convinced myself it meant nothing. The next morning, I woke up at dawn and could not fall back asleep. The penthouse pressed in on me. The walls, the silence, the expensive furniture that no one ever sat on. I kept thinking about what Robin had said, about quiet, about real. I got dressed before I could talk myself out of it. Jeans I had not worn in over a year, a sweater that felt soft instead of structured, sneakers instead of heels. I packed a small black suitcase with enough clothes for a few days and called a car service. His address was still in my phone from the payment I sent. The drive took me out of the city, through smaller towns, past fields turning gold in the early autumn light. The further I went, the easier it became to breathe. By the time I arrived, the rain had stopped completely. The sky was gray but softer now, gentler. The farmhouse sat at the end of a gravel drive, surrounded by fields that stretched out green and endless. The house was white with faded blue shutters, a wraparound porch, and wood that looked like it had weathered 100 storms. It looked lived in, loved, real. I stood at the bottom of the porch steps for a full minute, suitcase in hand, heart hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. Then I walked up and knocked. The door opened and Robin stood there barefoot, dark brown hair messy, eyes wide with confusion and something else I could not name. He looked at me, then at the suitcase, then back at me. "Your offer," I said, gripping the handle until my knuckles turned white. "Is it still good?" For a long second, neither of us moved. A breeze moved through the fields, carrying the smell of wet earth and grass. He stared at me like he was trying to figure out if I was real. Then he stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Come in," he said quietly, "before you change your mind." I crossed the threshold and the floor creaked under my feet. He closed the door behind me and the house settled around us with a sigh. The inside was small and warm. A stone fireplace, mismatched furniture that looked comfortable instead of expensive, a kitchen table scarred with use, and windows that looked out over fields that seemed to go on forever. I suddenly became aware of how out of place I looked. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, a suitcase that cost more than most people's rent. He saw me looking around and smiled, softer this time. "It's not much," he said, "but it's home." "It's perfect," I heard myself say, and I meant it. "I can pay rent," I said, reaching into my bag for an envelope I had prepared. 3 weeks, cash, I just need some time to think." He stared at the envelope like it was something foreign. "You don't have to do that." I placed it on the kitchen counter anyway. The bills inside felt heavy, significant. "I'm not here for charity," I said, not sharp, just honest. He nodded slowly, still looking stunned by my presence. "Okay," he said finally. "Guest room's upstairs, second door on the right. It's small, but it's clean. That's all I need." I picked up my suitcase and climbed the narrow staircase. The wood creaked with every step. I found the guest room and closed the door behind me. The room was simple. A bed with a handmade quilt, a dresser, a window that overlooked the fields. It smelled like lavender and sunshine. I sat on the edge of the bed and let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Outside, I could hear birds, wind moving through the trees, the distant sound of water from somewhere I could not see. For the first time in longer than I could remember, the world felt quiet enough to hear myself think. That first week, we barely spoke. Robin left early every morning, heading out to work on neighboring farms, fixing equipment, mending fences, doing whatever needed doing. I stayed in the guest room mostly, staring at my laptop, deleting emails from the firm, trying to remember who I was before I became what they wanted. But I could not sit still for long. I found myself in the kitchen, cooking. Real cooking, not ordering in. I made things I remembered my grandmother making. Chicken and dumplings, beef stew, cornbread from scratch. I left the food on the stove covered in foil with no notes because I did not know what to say. Robin never asked questions. He would come home covered in dirt and hay, wash up at the kitchen sink, and eat whatever I made. He always did the dishes after, leaving them clean and drying by morning. I started wearing his old flannel shirts because everything I brought required dry cleaning and that life felt like it belonged to someone else. Without the suits, without the meetings, I felt smaller, more like myself. We passed each other in the hallway with polite words. "Morning. Thanks for dinner. Looks like rain. Nothing deeper." But I noticed things. The way he hummed while he worked on the porch. The careful way he closed doors so they would not slam. How he always left the porch light on at night, even after he went to bed, like he was making sure I could find my way if I needed to. One morning, I woke up early and started cleaning. Not because the house was dirty, but because my hands needed something to do. I organized the mail on the counter, scrubbed the old farmhouse sink until it gleamed, and went into town to buy groceries. Real groceries. Fresh eggs from a farm stand, milk in glass bottles, apples from an orchard, bread from a bakery that smelled like my childhood. When Robin came home that night, he stopped in the doorway of the kitchen and stared. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I know," I replied. "It helps me think." He nodded, then before he could leave, he said, "That shirt looks good on you." I glanced down at the flannel I was wearing. Blue and worn, soft with age, my cheeks warmed. "It was on the back of the door." "Keep it," he said. Then he disappeared upstairs and I stood in the kitchen smiling at nothing. The second week, something shifted between us. I was at the stove one evening when he came home, sleeves rolled up, stirring soup in a pot that had seen decades of use. My hair was loose, curling from the steam, and I had flour on my jeans from making biscuits. "Hope you're hungry," I said without turning around. "I made too much. I always am." We ate at the kitchen table on mismatched plates that somehow fit together. The food was simple and warm and tasted like home. We did not talk much, but the silence felt comfortable instead of empty. After dinner, I washed and he dried. Our hands brushed over a bowl and neither of us pulled away. "You hum when you cook," he said. I froze, cloth in hand. "You noticed?" "Yeah, it's nice. Sounds like you're happy." I laughed, surprised. "I haven't hummed in years." "Well," he said, smiling down at the dish in his hands, "maybe you should keep doing it." That night I heard him moving around downstairs, the sound of him settling onto the sofa. I lay in the guest room with the window cracked open, listening to the wind in the fields and feeling something in my chest loosen. By the third week, I stopped thinking of this as temporary. The crooked cabinet in the kitchen bothered me, so I fixed it. Robin found me on my knees with his toolbox spread around me, hair tied back with a rubber band, bottom lip caught between my teeth in concentration. "You didn't have to do that," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "It was crooked." He watched me work, and I felt his eyes on me like warmth. This was not the woman who argued in boardrooms. This was someone I was just starting to meet. That night, he knocked on my door. I opened it to find him standing in the hallway, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Why did you really come here?" I looked at him for a long time. His dark brown hair was still damp from a shower, his flannel shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his eyes steady and kind. "Because you saw me," I said quietly. "Not my job, not my address, not my last name, just me." "And who are you now?" he asked. I smiled, unsure and hopeful all at once. "Still figuring that out." The 3 weeks passed and neither of us mentioned them. The envelope of cash stayed on the counter, untouched. The guest room door stayed open more often than it was closed. Small things changed without discussion. His jacket appeared on my shoulders during evening walks. My coffee cup found a permanent spot next to his. I did not know it then, but something had already shifted between us. And neither of us wanted to stop it. Somewhere between Thanksgiving and the first snow, I stopped pretending this was temporary. It happened in small, quiet ways. His hand on the small of my back as I reached for something on a high shelf. The way he said my name, soft and certain, like he had been saying it his whole life. My books spread across his coffee table, his work gloves making space for my laptop on the bench by the door. One evening I came downstairs to find him fixing the old floor lamp in the living room, the one that flickered like it was trying to communicate in Morse code. "Fire hazard," he said, clicking it on. The light stayed steady, warm. Much better. I watched him put the tools away, hands gentle and sure. He had dirt under his nails and sawdust in his hair, and he looked more real than anyone I had ever known in the city. That night we ate shepherd's pie and played cards at the kitchen table. He laughed, really laughed, head tipped back, and I realized I was laughing too. Free and easy and new. "Welcome to farm life," he joked. "It's not so bad," I said, meaning it. We started taking walks through the fields at sunset. Long, slow walks with no destination. I wore his jacket with the sleeves too long and my city shoes that were completely wrong for the terrain. He did not hold my hand at first, but our arms brushed, our fingers grazed, like accidents that were not accidents at all. One evening, sitting on a fence overlooking a pond that reflected the pink sky, I told him about my marriage. The perfect wedding photos that hid the loneliness. The promotions that cost me everything I actually cared about. The moment I realized I had built a life I did not recognize. He told me about his parents, who had left him this farm when they retired to Arizona. About the girlfriend who left because she wanted the city and he wanted the land. About choosing a quiet life and wondering sometimes if he had chosen wrong. We did not cry. We just sat together and let the truth settle between us like dust after a storm. The farmhouse kept changing. Slowly, carefully, the porch rail I fixed. The kitchen curtains we hung together, him holding the ladder while I worked. Our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away. Then the call came. I was making breakfast when my phone rang. A number I knew too well. The senior partner at my firm. I let it go to voicemail, then another call. And another. When Robin came in from the barn that afternoon, I was packing by the window, phone pressed to my ear, using the voice I thought I had left behind. Sharp, professional, cold. When I hung up, I stood staring out at the fields like they might have answers. "They want me back," I said without turning around. "Full partner, my own cases, everything I worked for." He was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want? I did not answer because I did not know. That night I lay in the guest room staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through numbers and titles and everything I had given up. I left before dawn, drove back to the city, to my building, to the penthouse that still had my furniture and my things and none of my heart. I stood in the lobby of my law firm and stared at the elevator that would take me to the 34th floor. I made it as far as pressing the button before I turned around. When I got back to the farmhouse, the sun was setting. Robin was sitting on the porch steps, a beer in his hand, staring out at the fields like he was waiting for something. For me. They offered me everything, I said, sitting down beside him. Money, control, a corner office with my name on a gold plaque, and I told them I needed time to think. We sat in silence as the sky turned pink and orange and purple. Finally, he asked, his voice quiet and careful, "If you go back, will I lose you?" I thought about the silence of the penthouse, the empty rooms, the person I used to be. "If I go back," I said, "I'll lose myself." He smiled, sad and understanding. "Then stay." But I could not answer, not yet. I went inside and started packing. He followed but did not speak, just helped me fold the flannels I had claimed, zip the suitcase closed. Every movement felt wrong, heavy, like we were both underwater. At the door, I turned back. "If I come back," I asked, voice breaking, "will you still be here?" "Where else would I go?" he said simply. I nodded and walked to my car. I drove halfway to the city before I pulled over on the side of the highway and cried so hard I could not see the road. I sat there for an hour, maybe more, watching headlights pass and thinking about what I was driving toward and what I was leaving behind. Then I turned the car around. It was almost midnight when I pulled back into his driveway. Every light in the farmhouse was on. Robin was on the porch, still dressed, still awake, still waiting. I got out fast this time. No heels, no second thoughts, no suitcase. "I couldn't do it," I said, walking toward him. "I got halfway there and I couldn't breathe. I chose this. I chose you." He stood frozen until I was right in front of him, close enough to see the relief wash over his face. "I don't know how to do perfect," I said, my voice shaking, "but I know how to stay." He wrapped his arms around me and I leaned into him, finally, fully. The farmhouse settled around us. The porch light hummed. The fields stretched out in the darkness, and nothing felt uncertain anymore. I did not unpack right away. The suitcase sat by the door for days, half open, like proof that staying was still a choice I made every single morning when I woke up. Robin did not rush me. We had learned that some things only break when you push too hard. Life became something quiet and real. Mornings started with coffee on the porch, watching the sun come up over the fields. I burned toast. He burned eggs. We laughed about it like it was the most important thing in the world. The town noticed before we did. The woman at the farm stand raised her eyebrows when we came in together. "You still staying out at the Hayes place?" she asked me. "I am," I said, and Robin's hand found mine. "That's not what I asked," she said, smiling. We just smiled back and bought our apples. The firm kept calling. I deleted most emails without opening them. Some days I read them, felt the pull of that old life, and closed my laptop. I started sketching again. Not legal briefs, but plans for the farmhouse. A new porch, better windows, a garden in the spring. We fixed the porch together when the weather warmed. New boards, fresh white paint. The creek turned into something musical, something that sounded like home. On the last evening of work, we sat on the new steps with mugs of cider, watching the sunset paint the fields gold. "I used to think staying meant giving up," I said quietly. "And now?" he asked. "Now I think leaving would have been." We never talked about forever. We just kept choosing each other in small, everyday ways. His jacket on my shoulders, my books on his shelves, his tools making space for my laptop, my laughter filling rooms that used to be quiet. Some nights I hummed while I cooked and he listened from the doorway with a smile. Some mornings I woke up to find him already awake, watching me sleep like I was something precious. We fit together without trying. The suitcase disappeared one day. I did not pack it away consciously. It was just gone. In its place was a closet full of flannels and jeans and a bathroom counter that was suddenly too small for two. The farmhouse felt full. Not crowded, not perfect. Just lived in. And on the porch, the light stayed on. A beacon for a woman who learned that sometimes home is not a place you build with money and ambition. Sometimes it is a place you stumble into on a rainy night when a stranger sees you and offers you something real. Sometimes it is fields that stretch forever and a man with dark brown hair who fixes things and makes you remember what it feels like to breathe. Sometimes home is just knowing that when you leave, you can always come back. and someone will be waiting on the porch with the light on, ready to welcome you home.